Hello, traveler. You know that feeling when life seems to have lost its color? When nothing sparks your interest anymore, when the future looks hazy and unclear, and even getting out of bed takes enormous effort. Yeah, that deep discouragement, that profound apathy so many people feel, this is often a symptom of something much deeper, which is precisely the loss of meaning. And that brings us to today's lesson, because when this happens, it is possible, yes, to recover your will to live. And recovering that will isn't just about being more positive or thinking happy thoughts. No, recovering your will to live is, above all, about understanding why the flame went out in the first place and how it is possible to reignite it. So let's look at this. Look, the will to live is something that is deeply intertwined with the meaning we give to our existence. That is why when a human being loses their why for living, they inevitably also lose their reason to act, their purpose for doing anything at all. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and survivor of Nazi concentration camps, wrote something profoundly powerful about this. Those who have a why can endure almost anyhow. He observed something remarkable. The prisoners who managed to survive the daily horrors of the concentration camps were, for the most part, those who could still see some meaning in continuing to live, even in the midst of unimaginable suffering. It could be love for someone waiting for them, or a future dream they wanted to realize, or the will to maintain their own dignity in the face of suffering. Whatever it was, they had a purpose that gave meaning to their lives, something that made enduring worthwhile. And when that meaning disappears, what emerges in its place is existential emptiness, a feeling that nothing makes sense, that everything is just mechanical repetition, and that life has become nothing more than a sequence of identical days bleeding into one another. And this emptiness, this void, manifests as apathy, as discouragement, as procrastination, and even in physical symptoms like fatigue, insomnia, and irritability. So happiness becomes something that stays far away from us, almost unreachable. But here is the key point. The recovery of the will to live doesn't come from the pursuit of happiness, because happiness is a consequence, it is not a cause. In other words, the path forward isn't in seeking to feel pleasure. It is in reconstructing meaning, because the antidote to a lack of will is purpose. Having a purpose generates meaning in life. Someone without a purpose drifts aimlessly, like a boat without a rudder. And many people think that having a purpose is something grandiose, right? Changing the world, or starting a company, writing a book, making some massive impact. But the truth is that meaning can be hidden in the small things of everyday life, in the moments we often overlook. And studies in positive psychology, especially those by Martin Seligman and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, show that lasting well-being is associated with engaging in activities that are meaningful, not just pleasurable. This means the solution is practical, not philosophical. It is about what you do, not just what you think. You have to do things that have a positive impact on other people's lives, and it doesn't need to be anything grandiose or world-changing. Finding meaning often means recognizing value in small routines. In the everyday actions we take, it is caring for someone who needs you. It is completing a task with attention and genuine effort. It is connecting with a friend. It is planting a tree, raising a pet, teaching something to another person. See, these small actions, when they're done with intention, with presence, rebuild the connection between the individual and the world around them. And that connection is what sustains your will to live. Because when you start to see yourself as useful again, when something good depends on your contribution, when there is someone or something that benefits from your presence in this world, that is when meaning is reborn. That is why small daily goals are powerful for restoring your will to live, because they generate a sense of progress and control, a feeling that you are moving forward. Every time you accomplish a small meaningful task, traveler, your brain releases dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter of motivation, the chemical that makes you want to keep going. And gradually, little by little, you start to feel pleasure in acting again. and there is more. One of the most transformative pillars of logotherapy, which was the approach developed by Viktor Frankl, is self-transcendence, which is precisely the capacity to step outside your own center and dedicate yourself to something that goes beyond yourself. Because here is the thing: when we're down, depressed, anxious, or discouraged, it is common for our minds to close off to the world, and everything starts revolving around our fears, our pains, and our dissatisfactions. We become trapped in our own internal world. It is like a labyrinth of mirrors. The more we look only inward, the more we lose ourselves in our own complications, in the endless reflections of our problems. That is why the way out is in going outward, in turning our attention beyond ourselves. It could be helping someone who needs support, engaging in a social project, caring for an animal, dedicating yourself to art, or simply doing something that generates value in the world around you. That is why research in effective neuroscience shows that acts of altruism and social connection activate the same brain areas associated with reward and well-being. In other words, when you do something meaningful for someone else, your brain literally reprograms itself for vitality, for renewed energy and purpose. And notice that self-transcendence isn't about denying yourself or abandoning your own needs. It is about reconnecting with something larger than yourself, but keeping yourself in the equation, maintaining your place in the story. It is remembering that life has a flow, that we're part of a broader web of existence, and that our value doesn't depend only on what we feel, but also on what we offer to others and to the world. And perhaps the most challenging and most liberating point is understanding that action comes before motivation. Many people wait to feel motivated before they start something, but the human brain doesn't always work that way. It is a common misconception. Neuropsychology shows that motivation is often a consequence of movement, not its prerequisite. It comes after we get moving, not before. Because when you act, even without desire, even when you don't feel like it, your body and mind begin to reorganize themselves. The act of doing sends signals throughout your system that something is changing, and this often activates the circuits of energy and dopamine. It is the same principle used in behavioral therapy, what is called behavioral activation. The depressed patient is encouraged to perform small actions even without feeling the desire to do them, and gradually, step by step, these actions break the cycle of apathy and reignite the person's will to live. So yes, at first it feels forced, it feels pointless, maybe even fake. But that is where the secret lies, acting even without desire. Often, yes, this is the first step for desire to return, for that spark to come back. And it is not about faking happiness or pretending everything is fine, but rather about giving your brain the chance to feel again, to reconnect with the experience of doing and being. So start small. Make your bed in the morning, go out for a walk, prepare a meal with care. Call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Action, repeated and conscious, rebuilds your will to live. Okay? In the end, it all comes down to one simple but incredibly powerful idea. Purpose protects you. It is like a quiet engine that pushes us forward, even when we can't see the road ahead clearly. Even when the road is difficult, when it is steep and full of obstacles. And someone with a clear purpose doesn't live without pain, because pain visits everyone at some point. It is part of being human. But that person lives despite the pain, despite the difficulties, because purpose propels us forward. It is what keeps human beings standing when everything else would have them fall. It is what makes life, even in its darkest phases, continue to be worth living. Because in the end, your will to live doesn't come from outside, from external circumstances or other people. It is born from within when we find a reason that is greater than the exhaustion, stronger than the fear, and deeper than the pain. And it is in that moment, in that profound discovery, that life suddenly begins to pulse again. Stay safe, traveler. I'll see you on our next journey.